On Christmas morning, Mom called and said, "We've set a special table for your sister's kids, but yours might be too disruptive," Dad added. "It's probably best if you don't come this year." I didn't argue. I just said, "Understood," and stayed home. By noon, my phone was blowing up. 31 missed calls, a video chat, and a voicemail. I played it twice. At 0:47, Dad said something that made me cover my mouth and sit there in silence. The call came at 800 in the morning on Christmas Day. I was standing in my kitchen, still in my pajamas, watching my twin daughters, Mia and Ruby, argue over who got to frost the sugar cookies first. They were 7 years old, identical down to the freckle on their left cheeks, and they'd been counting down to Christmas at Grandma's house for weeks. "Honey, we need to talk about today." My mother's voice came through the speaker, already laced with that particular tone of nervous apology I'd learned to recognize over the years. I set down the spatula. "What's going on?" "Well, Vanessa and her family are coming, and you know how Aiden and Chloe are. They're such well-behaved children. Vanessa's been working with them on their table manners, and we thought it would be nice to set up a special kids' table in the dining room where they could practice what they've learned." My sister Vanessa was 2 years younger than me, married to a corporate lawyer named Travis, and had 2 children who were 8 and 6. Perfect on paper, perfect in photos, perfect in every way that mattered to our parents. "Okay," I said slowly. "So where would Mia and Ruby sit?" The pause stretched too long. "That's what I wanted to discuss with you. Your girls are wonderful, of course they are, but they're a bit more energetic, spirited. And with Dad's new dining room furniture and Vanessa bringing the good china she inherited from Travis's grandmother, we thought maybe it would be less stressful for everyone if your family sat this one out. Just this year." I felt something cold settle in my chest. "You're uninviting us to Christmas." "Don't say it like that. We're just thinking practically. Your girls get loud. And last Thanksgiving, Ruby knocked over that vase and Mia kept interrupting when the adults were talking. Vanessa's children know how to sit quietly and eat properly. It's just easier this way." My father's voice came on the line then. "Your mother's right. It's probably best if you don't come this year. We'll do something with you girls another time, just the 5 of us." I looked at Mia and Ruby, flower in their hair, frosting on their faces, completely unaware their grandparents had just decided they weren't good enough for Christmas. "Understood," I said, and ended the call. The girls asked why I looked upset. I told them Grandma and Grandpa weren't feeling well, and we'd have Christmas at home instead, just us. Ruby cried for 10 minutes. Mia got quiet in that way that made my heart hurt worse than any tantrum could. My husband Keith worked overseas as a civil engineer on a long-term infrastructure project in Singapore. We'd been living apart for 8 months, seeing each other only through video calls, and during his brief visits home every 6 weeks. He was supposed to be home in 3 days, but right now I was handling this alone. I called him anyway, even though it was late evening where he was. He answered on the second ring, his face filling the screen, and I told him everything. His jaw tightened. They said, "What about our daughters?" That they're too disruptive, too loud, not well-mannered enough for the new furniture. Keith's voice went flat with anger. "I'm calling them." "Don't please, I just need to get through today." We spent Christmas morning baking more cookies than 3 people could ever eat. I put on cheerful music. We opened presents. I smiled until my face ached. The girls seemed happy enough, but I caught Ruby staring at the phone twice like she knew I'd lied about why we weren't going to Grandma's. Around 11:30, my phone started ringing. I ignored the first call from my mother, then the second. By the 5th call, I turned the ringer off. Keith texted me, "Your dad just called me 4 times. What's happening?" I didn't know. At 12:15, my phone showed 31 missed calls, then a video chat request from my father. I almost didn't answer, but something about the number of attempts made my stomach drop. I accepted the call. My father's face appeared on screen, and he wasn't in the dining room with the good china and the perfect grandchildren. He was in his car, and my mother was crying in the passenger seat beside him. "Where are you?" I asked. "We're at St. Mary's Hospital. You need to listen to something." "What happened? Is someone hurt?" "Just listen." He held up his phone and played a voicemail on speaker. It was from Vanessa, time-stamped from 47 minutes ago. Her voice was shrill, panicked. "Dad? Oh my God, Dad, you need to come right now." Travis collapsed. "We're in the ambulance heading to St. Mary's. He's not breathing right. They think it might be his heart. Please, we need you. Where are you? Call me back." But what made me cover my mouth, what made me sit down hard on my kitchen floor, was what came at the 0:47 mark. The call hadn't ended cleanly. In the background, while Vanessa was presumably waiting for our father to answer, there was shuffling. Then her voice came through clearly. She must have thought she'd hung up because she was talking to herself. Now her voice was different, calculating. 800,000 in life insurance. God, finally. Been swapping those pills for 6 weeks now. His stupid cardiologist keeps adjusting dosages completely clueless. Just a little longer, and this would have been over clean. At least now I can play the devastated wife angle. Travis unconscious means he can't contradict anything. The voicemail ended there, cutting off as she apparently realized the call was still connected and hung up. I played it again while my parents watched my face through the video call. My mother was sobbing. My father looked like he'd aged 10 years in one morning. We confronted her when we got to the hospital, Dad said. She denied everything at first. Then she tried to say it was a joke, that she was just venting. But Travis is in critical condition, and the doctors found almost no medication in his system when they ran his blood work. They're testing everything now. Where is she? The police are questioning her. They took her phone. They're searching her house. His voice cracked. I don't know how we missed this. Your mother and I have been so focused on Vanessa and her perfect life, and it was all fake. She's been miserable for years. Travis wanted a divorce last month. She's been telling everyone how expensive her lifestyle is, how much she'd lose in a divorce, how Travis's family money was supposed to be hers. My mother leaned into the frame. We're so sorry about this morning, about always comparing you girls, about making you feel like your children weren't good enough. We were wrong about everything. I should have felt vindicated. Part of me did, but mostly I felt sick. Is Travis going to make it? They don't know yet. It's going to be close. We ended the call because the police wanted to talk to my parents again. I sat on my kitchen floor for a long time, listening to Mia and Ruby laughing in the living room over some cartoon on TV. The house suddenly felt too quiet, despite the television noise. I pulled myself up and walked to the living room doorway, watching my daughters sprawled on the carpet, completely absorbed in their show. Ruby had frosting still dried in her hair from this morning's baking. Mia's pajama pants were on backwards. They were perfect exactly as they were. My phone buzzed with a text from my Aunt Patricia, my mother's older sister. She'd apparently heard the news through the family grapevine that traveled faster than any emergency alert system. Just heard about Vanessa. Are you okay? Your mother must be devastated. I didn't respond immediately. Aunt Patricia had always been the one family member who'd pushed back against my parents' favoritism, who'd pulled me aside at holidays and told me I was doing a great job, that my girls were wonderful, that Keith was a good man. She'd noticed things others hadn't. Another text came through. I'm driving up tomorrow. Don't argue. You need someone there who isn't falling apart. She was right. My parents were in crisis mode. Keith was trying to get home, but dealing with international flights during the holiday week was a nightmare. I was managing 2 confused 7-year-olds who kept asking questions I didn't know how to answer. That night, after the girls finally fell asleep, I did something I hadn't done in years. I pulled out old photo albums from the hall closet and spread them across the dining room table. Pictures of Vanessa and me as children before everything got complicated. There was one from when I was 8 and she was 6. We were building a snowman in the backyard, both of us covered in snow, laughing with our mouths wide open. Vanessa's face was pure joy, unguarded and real. When did that change? When did she learn to arrange her face into something more acceptable? I found another photo from my high school graduation. Vanessa was 14, standing between our parents. Even then, I could see it in the way she held herself, spine straight, smile, measured hands folded neatly. Meanwhile, I was in the background, mortarboard, crooked, laughing at something off camera, completely unaware of the photographer. My mother had framed Vanessa's graduation photo and put it on the mantel. Mine lived in a drawer somewhere. The doorbell rang at 7 the next morning. Aunt Patricia stood on my porch with 2 suitcases and a bag of bagels. You look like hell, she said, walking past me into the house. Merry after Christmas to you too. She set the bagels on the counter and turned to face me. Your mother called me 14 times yesterday. Your father called me 9 times. I let every single call go to voicemail because I knew they'd want me to tell them you were okay, and I needed to see for myself first. I'm managing. You're standing in your kitchen wearing the same clothes from yesterday with your hair in a knot that looks like a bird's nest. You're not managing. You're surviving. There's a difference. The girls thundered down the stairs, stopping short when they saw Patricia. Ruby recovered first, launching herself at our aunt with the fearlessness of a child who's always been welcomed. Aunt Trish, did you bring presents? Ruby, I started to scold, but Patricia laughed. As a matter of fact, I did. They're in the car. But first, who wants bagels? She had a gift for making everything feel normal. Within an hour, she'd fed everyone breakfast, helped the girls get dressed, and had me sitting at the table with actual coffee while she cleaned up the kitchen. "Talk to me," she said. Once the girls were occupied with the small toys she brought, I told her everything. The Christmas morning phone call, the rejection, the voicemail, Vanessa's arrest. All of it poured out in a jumbled mess while Patricia listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that shifted everything. "Your mother did this to Vanessa." "What?" "Not the murder attempt. That was Vanessa's choice. But the rest of it, the obsession with perfection, the performance. Your mother learned it from her mother who learned it from hers. It's generational trauma dressed up as good manners." She refilled my coffee. I watched my mother destroy my sister with constant criticism disguised as helpful suggestions. Everything had to look right, be right, seem right to the outside world. I got out, moved across the country, married someone my family didn't approve of, lived my life on my terms. Your mother stayed. She internalized every lesson about being the perfect daughter, perfect wife, perfect mother. Then she passed it to Vanessa. She passed it to both of us. No, she tried to. But you were always too stubborn. You married Keith even though your father thought you should wait. You had twins when your mother suggested you were too young. You kept working when she implied staying home would be better. You resisted every attempt to mold you. Patricia smiled sadly. Vanessa didn't resist. She absorbed it all. Every expectation, every judgment, every subtle message about what acceptable looked like. She built her entire identity around meeting those expectations. That doesn't excuse trying to kill her husband. Of course it doesn't. I'm not excusing anything. I'm explaining how someone gets to that point, when your entire sense of self is based on external validation. When you've built a life that looks perfect but feels empty, when the mask starts slipping and you're facing the loss of everything you've performed for, people break. Usually they just get divorced, or have affairs, or develop drinking problems. Vanessa broke in a much more dangerous direction. The conversation stayed with me. That night, after Aunt Patricia had put the girls to bed with stories and songs, I called my mother. She answered on the first ring. "How are you holding up?" I asked. The question seemed to break something in her. She cried for 5 minutes straight while I listened. When she finally collected herself enough to speak, her voice was raw. The police showed us her notebook. Pages and pages of calculations and plans and justifications. She wrote about how she'd play the grieving widow, how she'd comfort the children, how she'd finally have the money to maintain her lifestyle without Travis controlling everything. It was like reading something written by a stranger. "Mom, I need to ask you something, and I need you to really think about the answer." "Okay. When did Vanessa stop being real with you? When did she start performing?" The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Then my mother spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. She was 9 years old. We were at a family wedding. She was running around with the other children, dressed dirty, hair messy, laughing too loud. My mother pulled me aside and said I was letting her run wild, that people were talking, that I needed to teach her proper behavior. So I did. I took her to the bathroom, cleaned her up, and told her young ladies didn't act that way. She inhaled sharply. She looked up at me with these big eyes and asked, "You don't like me when I'm having fun?" And I said... Her voice broke completely. I said fun was fine at home, but in public we had to show our best selves. She was 9 years old, and I taught her that who she really was wasn't good enough. "Mom, you were different. You were 11, and when I tried the same speech with you, you asked me why Grandma got to decide how we acted. You wanted to know who made the rules about what was proper. You challenged everything. I was so frustrated with you at the time, but you were right to resist. You were right about all of it." We talked until past midnight. My mother told me things I'd never known. How her own mother had locked her in her room for laughing too loudly at dinner. How she'd been slapped for getting dirt on her dress. How she'd learned to be quiet and careful and always aware of how she appeared to others. I swore I'd never be that harsh with my own daughters, she said. But I passed along the same poison, just in gentler doses. I praised Vanessa for being well-behaved when I should have been worried she was too quiet. I corrected you for being loud when I should have been glad you felt free to express yourself. You can't change the past. No, but I can acknowledge it. And I can do better going forward if you let me. Keith called back within minutes of me texting him what happened. "I'm catching the next flight home. I don't care if I have to pay $10,000. I'm coming home right now." "You don't have to do that." "Yes, I do. You shouldn't be dealing with this by yourself." The next few days were chaos. Travis survived barely. He'd had a massive heart attack brought on by the sudden absence of his medication, combined with the stress Vanessa had been deliberately creating at home, picking fights, threatening him, keeping him anxious. The police found a notebook in her bedroom drawer outlining her entire plan, complete with calculations about life insurance payouts and how she'd play the grieving widow. She was arrested on Christmas evening. Attempted murder. Travis's parents hired lawyers. My parents were devastated, interrogating every memory, every family dinner, every time they'd praise Vanessa's perfect family while dismissing mine. I should have felt smug. I should have thrown it in their faces. But when my mother called me 3 days later, crying so hard she could barely speak, I just listened. Travis's condition stabilized on the third day. I drove to the hospital with Aunt Patricia, leaving the girls with a neighbor. The ICU was cold and sterile, all beeping machines and hushed voices. Travis's parents were in the waiting room, his mother's eyes red and swollen, his father pacing like a caged animal. They saw me and stopped. For a moment, I thought they'd blame me somehow, guilt by association. Instead, Travis's mother walked over and pulled me into a hug. "I'm so sorry you're caught up in this," she whispered. Travis was awake when they let me in. He looked smaller in the hospital bed tubes and wires connecting him to machines that tracked every heartbeat. His face was gray, but his eyes were clear. "You didn't have to come," he said, his voice weak. "Yes, I did." We sat in silence for a while. Finally, he spoke again. "I knew something was wrong. For months, I knew she was different, angry all the time. Everything I did irritated her. I thought maybe I was the problem, that I wasn't giving her enough attention or money or whatever she needed. I started seeing a therapist to figure out what I was doing wrong. This isn't your fault." My doctor kept adjusting my medication because my blood pressure wouldn't stabilize. I'd tell him I was taking it exactly as prescribed, and he'd look at me like he didn't believe me, like I was lying about following instructions. This went on for almost 2 months. Now I know why nothing worked. He turned his head to look at me directly. She was going to let me die. She was going to watch me have a heart attack and play the devastated wife. What kind of person does that? Someone who lost herself a long time ago. That's generous of you, considering she's the reason you and your kids got uninvited from Christmas. The bitter irony wasn't lost on either of us. "How are Aiden and Chloe?" His face crumpled, confused, scared. "They keep asking when Mommy's coming home, and I don't know how to explain that Mommy tried to hurt Daddy, and now she has to go away. They're 6 and 8 years old. How do you process something like that at that age?" I thought about Mia and Ruby, about how they'd asked why we didn't go to Grandma's, how I'd lied to protect them from a much smaller hurt than what Aiden and Chloe were facing. You tell them the truth in pieces they can understand. You get them help. You let them be angry and sad and confused. You don't pretend everything's fine when it's not. Vanessa always pretended everything was fine, even when it wasn't. He closed his eyes. I asked for a divorce 4 weeks ago. We'd been in couples therapy for 6 months, and it was clear neither of us was happy. I told her we'd work out a fair custody arrangement, that I'd make sure she was financially secure, that we could do this civilly. She smiled and said, "Okay." She was so calm about it, so reasonable. I thought we were handling it maturely. He laughed bitter and broken. She was planning my funeral. The machines beeped steadily. A nurse came in to check his vitals. After she left, Travis spoke again, quieter now. "Your parents talked about her like she was perfect, about how well-behaved your niece and nephew were, how organized Vanessa was, how she managed everything so beautifully." He looked at me. It was all a cage. The perfect house, the perfect children, the perfect life. She built it bar by bar until she couldn't see a way out except through my death. I stayed for an hour, mostly in silence. Sometimes silence was the only appropriate response. When I got back home, Aunt Patricia was making dinner while the girls did homework at the kitchen table. Mia looked up when I walked in. "Is Uncle Travis going to die?" I sat down next to her. "No, sweetheart. He's going to be okay." Why did Aunt Vanessa hurt him? There it was, the question I'd been dreading. Ruby stopped writing, waiting for my answer. Sometimes adults make very bad choices when they are unhappy. Aunt Vanessa made a choice that hurt people, and now she has to face consequences for that choice. Like when I pushed Ruby and had to apologize and lose TV time. Similar, but much more serious. The consequences will last much longer. Ruby's lower lip trembled. Is Aunt Vanessa a bad person? How do you explain complexity to a 7-year-old? How do you convey that people aren't simply good or bad, that someone can be loved and still do monstrous things? She did a very bad thing. That doesn't mean she's a bad person in every way, but it does mean she needs to be somewhere she can't hurt anyone else while she figures out why she made such a terrible choice. It wasn't a perfect answer. There were no perfect answers to questions like these. Keith arrived home the next morning, exhausted from 30 hours of travel, but determined. He dropped his bags in the hallway and immediately gathered all 3 of us into his arms. "I'm home. I'm staying home. I already talked to my supervisor. I'm done with overseas assignments." "Keith, you love that work. I love my family more. What's happening right now, this is exactly why I need to be here. Not halfway around the world missing everything. Aunt Patricia left 2 days later, satisfied that Keith was home and I had support. Before she left, she pulled me aside. Your parents are going to need help getting through this. They're going to lean on you. It's up to you whether you let them, but remember, you don't owe them your emotional labor, just because they're finally seeing what's been in front of them all along. You get to protect yourself and your girls first. Her words gave me permission to set boundaries I'd never known I could set. The legal process ground forward slowly. Vanessa was held in county jail without bail, deemed a flight risk and a danger. The prosecution built their case methodically over the next 8 months, the notebook, the voicemail. Travis's medical records showing the medication inconsistencies testimony from the pharmacist about Vanessa's prescription pickups. They built an airtight case brick by brick. The trial finally began in September, nearly 9 months after Christmas. It became a media spectacle with reporters camped outside the courthouse and legal analysts dissecting every development on cable news. Vanessa pleaded not guilty, claiming temporary insanity, claiming Travis had been abusive, claiming anything that might create reasonable doubt. Travis testified from a wheelchair, still recovering from his heart attack, and the surgery that followed, describing how she convinced him he was losing his mind, how she'd hidden his medications and replaced them with placebos, how she told him his symptoms were all stress and anxiety, while she documented everything in her notebook like it was a science experiment. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. 25 years in prison with possibility of parole after 12. Sentencing came 2 months later in November. By then, Travis had filed for divorce. The papers were served to Vanessa through her attorney. The divorce wouldn't be finalized for months, but he'd started the process. She tried to kill him. Our daughter tried to murder her husband for money. While we were bragging about her children's table manners, she was planning a funeral. I know, Mom. And we told you to stay home because your girls were too loud. Because they knocked over a vase once. Because they interrupted conversations. She was sobbing. They're 7 years old. They're supposed to be loud. They're supposed to be messy. That's what children do. But Vanessa's kids are quiet because they're terrified of her. The police said Aiden told them his mom yells at them if they talk at dinner. Chloe said she's not allowed to play with her toys unless everything else is perfect first. I closed my eyes. You didn't know. We should have known. We should have seen it. We chose appearances over truth. We chose the daughter who looked perfect over the one who actually was happy. Keith came home on December 28th, walking through our front door with his suitcase and immediately scooping both girls into his arms. They shrieked with joy, loud and messy, and completely unrestrained. He looked at me over their heads, and I saw everything I needed to see in his face. My father came by on New Year's Eve. He didn't call first, just showed up at our door, holding a bag from the toy store, looking older than I'd ever seen him. Can I come in? I let him in. Mia and Ruby were instantly suspicious, remembering how Christmas had been canceled, but they warmed up when he sat on the floor with them and asked about every single present they'd gotten, listening to their long, rambling, interruption-filled stories without once checking his watch or suggesting they speak more quietly. After the girls went to bed, he sat at my kitchen table with Keith and me. Your mother and I have been going to therapy, individual and couples. The therapist asked us to think about why we valued Vanessa's family over yours, why we thought quiet children were better than happy ones, why we made you feel less than. Did you figure it out? Keith's voice was careful, but cold. We were doing what our parents did to us, following the rules we were taught about how things should look. Your mother's family judged everything by appearance. My father used to say children should be seen and not heard. We just repeated it without thinking, without questioning if it was right or fair or even made sense. He looked directly at me. We damaged our relationship with you because we were too busy being impressed by a performance. Vanessa learned how to perform for us. You didn't. You were just yourself. We punished you for being genuine. You told us not to come for Christmas because my daughters were too disruptive. I know. I will regret that phone call for the rest of my life. His voice broke. I almost lost my son-in-law because we were too blind to see what was happening. I did lose my daughter, maybe permanently. She might go to prison for 20 years. And I nearly lost you too because I couldn't see that the noise and mess and interruptions meant your children felt safe enough to just be children. I wanted to hold on to my anger. Part of me felt entitled to it, but I looked at Keith and he gave me a small nod, leaving it up to me. What happens now? That's up to you. We can't undo Christmas morning. We can't take back years of comparison and judgment, but we want to try to do better if you let us. Keith spoke up then. You hurt them. You told two 7-year-old girls they weren't good enough for their own family. That's not something we're going to forget quickly. I know, Dad said. I don't expect forgiveness. I'm just asking for a chance. My parents were in the courtroom when the verdict was read. So was I. When the jury foreman announced guilty, my mother made a sound like something had broken inside her. I reached over and took her hand anyway. She gripped it like drowning. Travis got full custody of Aiden and Chloe during the divorce proceedings, which took another 7 months to finalize. The children were in therapy 3 times a week, learning how to be children again, instead of little soldiers trained to perform perfection. My parents started coming to Sunday dinners at our house. My mother learned to smile when the girls got loud to laugh when they spilled things to help clean up the messes without commentary about how Vanessa's children never spilled. My father taught them how to use his old fishing rod in the backyard, letting them shriek and run around without once telling them to settle down. It was strange and awkward at first. Keith watched them like a hawk, ready to shut down any hint of judgment or comparison. But they were trying, genuinely painfully trying. One Sunday in March, Ruby knocked over a full glass of juice at the dinner table. It went everywhere, soaking the tablecloth, dripping onto the floor. She froze her face, going white, waiting for the reprimand. My mother got up, grabbed paper towels, and said, "Well, that's what we get for putting the glass so close to the edge. Come on, Ruby, let's clean this up together." Ruby's shoulders dropped with relief. She helped clean, chattering the whole time about a butterfly she'd seen at school. My mother listened to every word. After they left that night, Keith wrapped his arms around me from behind while I washed dishes. "They're actually changing," he said. "Trauma does that sometimes, forces people to face who they've been. Are you okay with letting them back in?" I thought about Christmas morning, about that phone call telling me my daughters weren't good enough, about years of feeling like I was a disappointing daughter because my life didn't look like a magazine spread. Then I thought about my father sitting on the floor with the girls, about my mother cleaning up spilled juice without flinching, about how they showed up every single Sunday, no matter how uncomfortable it was, putting in the work to earn back what they'd lost. I think so, eventually, with boundaries. Fair enough. Keith left for Singapore again in April, but this time my parents stepped up in ways they never had before. They picked the girls up from school twice a week. They came to dance recitals and soccer games. They babysat so I could have a night out with friends. They never once complained about noise or mess or interruptions. My mother admitted one evening while Mia and Ruby were building a chaotic fort out of couch cushions, "I don't know what I was so afraid of. This is what love is supposed to look like, loud and messy and real." I visited Vanessa in prison once 3 months after her sentencing. I don't know why I went. Closure, maybe. Understanding. She looked smaller in her orange jumpsuit, her perfect makeup gone, her highlighted hair grown out to mousy brown roots. She stared at me through the glass partition. Come to gloat, her voice was bitter. "No, I came to understand." "Understand what?" "That I'm a monster. That's what everyone says." I came to understand how it got this far. When you started believing the performance was more important than the truth. She laughed harsh and broken. "You were always so self-righteous. You never cared what anyone thought. You just existed however you wanted. Mom and Dad loved that about you, even if they didn't know it. You were authentic. They compared us constantly. They always chose you." I blinked. They chose the idea of me, the version I showed them. Do you know how exhausting that was? Keeping everything perfect. Keeping the kids perfect. Keeping Travis convinced we had a perfect marriage while I was slowly suffocating under the weight of my own lies. She pressed her hand against the glass. "I hated you sometimes because you had what I wanted, a husband who actually loved you. Kids who could just be kids. Parents who, even when they were criticizing you, at least they were seeing the real you." That doesn't excuse what you did. I know. I'm not asking for excuses. I'm just telling you how the perfect daughter became the murderer. It started small. Little lies, little performances, then bigger ones. Then I couldn't find my way back to whoever I used to be before I started pretending. I left the prison feeling hollowed out. There was no satisfaction in seeing her locked up. Just sadness for the sister I'd lost long before she was arrested. Lost to the desperate need to maintain an image that was killing her from the inside. Travis started dating again about a year later. A kindergarten teacher named Bethany, who was patient with Aiden and Chloe, who didn't expect perfection, who let them be messy and loud and gradually less afraid. I met her at a birthday party for Aiden's 10th birthday, and she seemed genuinely kind. Travis looked lighter than I'd ever seen him, like someone had lifted a crushing weight off his chest. Keith transferred back to a domestic position in his company after 18 months. We celebrated by having a loud, chaotic family dinner where the girls shrieked with joy and knocked over 2 glasses and interrupted every single adult conversation. My parents came. Travis and his kids came. We were missing one person and everyone felt the absence, but we didn't talk about it. Mia asked me once when she was 9, "Why don't we ever see Aunt Vanessa?" I thought about lying, making it easier, but I decided on truth. She made some very bad choices that hurt people. She's in a place where she has to stay for a long time because of those choices. Like jail, yes. Did she hurt us? The question gutted me. In a way, yes, but not physically. She hurt feelings and broke trust. Grandma says trust is the most important thing in a family. Grandma's right about that. My parents sold their house with the new dining room furniture and bought something smaller, more practical. My mother donated the good china. They went to therapy for 2 years, working through their own upbringing, their own damage, learning to separate performance from love. On Christmas morning, 2 years after that first devastating phone call, my parents showed up at our house at 7 in the morning with bags of presents and ingredients for breakfast. The girls were still in pajamas, hair-tangled voices loud with excitement. My mother hugged them both, not caring about the wrinkles in her shirt or the sticky handprints on her sleeve. My father helped them tear into presents, laughing at their shrieks. My phone rang around noon. Keith answered it while I was helping the girls build a complicated toy that required 14 different steps and 3 different screwdriver sizes. "It's the prison," Keith said, holding out the phone. "Greenwood Correctional." My stomach dropped. I stepped into the kitchen for privacy. "This is a call from Vanessa Mitchell, an inmate at Greenwood Correctional Facility. Will you accept the charges?" I almost said no, then yes. Vanessa's voice came through thin and tired. "I didn't think you'd answer." "Neither did I. What do you want to say?" "Merry Christmas, and to tell you, I'm glad you didn't let them ruin your family the way I let them ruin mine. I heard from Dad's letters that you all have Sunday dinners now, that Mom and Dad are different, better." "They're trying." "Good. That's good." She paused. "I have at least 10 more years before I'm even eligible for parole, maybe more depending on the board. Aiden and Chloe will be grown. They won't remember me except as the person who hurt their father. That's fair. That's what I deserve." "Vanessa." "No, let me finish. I am working with a therapist here, trying to understand how I became this person, trying to figure out who I was before I started performing. There might not be anything left to salvage, but I'm trying." Her voice cracked. "Tell Mia and Ruby their aunt is sorry she never really knew them. Tell them to stay loud and messy and real. Tell them perfect is just another word for fake." The call ended. I stood in my kitchen, holding the phone, listening to my family laughing in the living room. Keith found me there a few minutes later. "You okay?" "I don't know." She apologized. "Does that change anything?" "No, but maybe it's a start, for her at least." We went back to the living room where Mia was showing my father her new art set and Ruby was teaching my mother a complicated clapping game. The house was loud and chaotic and full of wrapping paper and half-assembled toys. My mother caught my eye and smiled, real and warm and nothing like the careful, judgmental woman who'd called me 2 years ago to uninvite me to Christmas. Some families break, some rebuild. Ours was doing both one loud, messy, imperfect day at a time. And somewhere in a prison 200 miles away, the perfect daughter was learning the same lesson I'd always known. The only thing worse than being judged for who you really are is being loved for who you're pretending to be.